Ahorja agus a cóglacha, Freunde und Kollegen. A very good morning to you all. My name is Noelle O'Connell and I'm the CEO of European Movement Ireland. I'm delighted to welcome you to this morning's European Movement Ireland and Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung online discussion event, where we focus on Ireland and Germany's priorities for a post-Brexit Europe. And I think the timeliness of our topic is particularly apt and underscores its importance and relevance as we welcome what I think is fair to say one of the largest and most internationally diverse audiences we've ever had for an online event such as this. So a very warm welcome to all of you joining us online across Europe. However, it is poignant and indeed appropriate that we begin our event today at that defining moment of European history, where at the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month of 1918, the battlefields in Europe fell silent as the Great War came to an end. Today is Armistice Day, and we remember and pay tribute to all those who sacrificed so much and to those who tragically lost their lives during World War I. Sadly, it did not, as was hoped, prove to be the war to end all wars, as we saw subsequently in World War II. Indeed, so much of Europe's history has flowed from those conflicts, closely bound up in our ongoing and evolving history, which has in turn shaped the European project that has led to the European Union of today. And to help us explore the topic of where Germany and Ireland view the European Union post-Brexit, we have an incredibly distinguished panel to explore this further with us. Joining us today is Ireland's Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Defence, Simon Coveney, Germany's Ambassador to Ireland, Her Excellency Deike Potzel, with Matthias, Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung's Director for the UK and Ireland, who will also say a few words. Our running order today will see a keynote address, firstly by Minister Coveney, who will then be followed by Ambassador Potzel, and then we will have a Q&A with our speakers. So that's your opportunity, ladies and gentlemen, to submit your questions if we haven't already. And I'm delighted to see we already have a significant raft of questions in. Please do feel free to send them in by emailing events@europeanmovement.ie or on social media, #EMICAS. And my colleague Aoife will be sending them on to me so I can bring them to the Minister and Ambassador's attention. Before I formally introduce the Minister and the Ambassador, I would like to say a few words of background and information on European Movement Ireland. And Matthias will talk about the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung Foundation. For over 65 years, European Movement Ireland has been Ireland's longest established not-for-profit voluntary membership organisation in Ireland, working to strengthen the connection between all sectors of Irish society and Europe, and to act as a conduit between Europe and Ireland. What drives our work is that engagement with people here in Ireland about developments in Europe, in the European Union, the impact of our EU membership, and we do this through outreach work, engagement, podcasts, publications, communications, networking event and membership services. We are a not-for-profit independent membership-based organisation, and like many other NGOs, the COVID pandemic is impacting us all. Now more than ever, we need your support as a member to help us continue be that bridge between Ireland and Europe. And I think it's fair to say today's online discussion will underline how important bridge building is and will continue to be for Ireland in a post-Brexit EU. To find out more about how we are and to get involved and join us, please log on to europeanmovement.ie, where you'll see all the relevant information. At this point in proceedings, I would like to invite our partners for this event, Matthias Barner, CAS's Director for the UK and Ireland, to say a few words of welcome. Welcome, Matthias. You're joining us from London, I believe, at such an interesting time for Germany's role in Europe, not least during the German Presidency of the Council of the EU, and earlier, only a couple of weeks ago in October, marking 30 years of German reunification. And I know many of us would have seen Chancellor Angela Merkel's remarks this week, with whom I believe you previously worked. In her remarks, how she referenced on the 9th of November every year Germany commemorating both the best and worst of its history. And in those remarks on reunification in 1990, that 30-year anniversary of the Berlin Wall coming down and the elections of the new President-elect Biden, she said that we Germans have witnessed and experienced firsthand the important role that the United States plays in freedom and democracy in the world. And she spoke about values, about freedom, about democracy and respect for rule of law. I'd love to get your insights on today's discussion, Matthias, as the CAS's director for UK and Ireland. Such an exciting time to be at the helm of CAS in the UK and Ireland. Matthias.
Thank you very much, Noelle. Good morning to everybody and a warm welcome also on behalf of the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, especially to our speakers today. Minister Coveney, Ambassador Potzel, thank you very much for taking your time and participating in this event and speaking to our audience. We are, as Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, delighted to cooperate together with the European Movement Ireland. And let me be brief, but allow me a few words to the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation. The Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, or as we say in German, Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, is a political foundation closely associated with the Christian Democratic Union, the CDU. And as a German political party, the CDU is like Fine Gael in Ireland, member of the same party group in Europe, the European People's Party. Konrad Adenauer, the holder of the name of our foundation, was, as you know, the first chancellor of the Federal Republic of Germany following World War II. With his leadership and vision during his years in power, Germany achieved democracy, stability, and the integration into Europe. And by the way, Adenauer was chancellor until the age of 87. So I think maybe a good proof that also politicians in their 80s can be successful statesmen. As Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, today we focus on civic education, political dialogue, and international cooperation. Our primary concerns are the strengthening of liberal democracy, the promotion of the European unification, and of course, you mentioned it, Noelle, transatlantic relations. We have an extensive global network with offices in more than 100 countries. And since January this year, our foundation has a base in Dublin as well. And with Katie O'Connor, who's today with us, we have an Irish colleague being in charge of our project activities in Ireland. And I'm very happy about this. And together we look forward to building on established relationships and developing new connections. Ireland and Germany share many common values. The Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung is committed to a close relationship and increased level of engagement and activities with our partners in Ireland. And for this, again, I'm very thankful to the European movement. I think I would like to leave it at that. Thank you very much for your attention, and back to you, Noelle.
Thank you very much, Matthias. And look, we're delighted to be partnering with you and Cass and Katie and all your colleagues here, and look forward to continuing to work with you in the future and in the busy years ahead. Today's event, coming so soon as it does, ladies and gentlemen, after the US elections, in addition to Brexit, which I'm sure Minister Coveney is all too familiar with and which hasn't gone away, you know, are all taking place against the backdrop of countries grappling with the complexities and challenges posed by the global coronavirus pandemic. And these issues will have profound implications on European policies and indeed European politics for years to come, and will be at the core of debates about the future of Europe and the conference on the future of Europe, which we look forward to its rollout and its starting very shortly. And indeed, just as it is at the geographic centre of Europe, so too is Germany at the centre of how Europe will address these pressing issues, as indeed how we will too be in Ireland. So please continue, if you haven't, to send in your questions. And it is now my very great honour to introduce our first speaker and our guest of honour for this morning's event. and it's fair to say probably one of the busiest people in Ireland at the moment. So very grateful, Minister Coveney, to you for so generously giving of your time and being with us this morning. He doesn't need much of an introduction, but since June 2017, Minister Coveney has been Ireland's Minister for Foreign Affairs, and since June 2020 holds that position, as well as being Ireland's Minister for Defence, and it is fair to say has a very distinguished parliamentary career. Not an exaggeration, and Minister Coveney, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but probably since 2017, the Minister has spent much of his time dealing and engaging on the complicated issues surrounding Brexit. But perhaps today's event might be a little bit of a change of track for him, so to speak, about talking and referencing about Europe beyond Brexit. Minister, I'm very honoured and appreciative of you taking the time to be with us, and you have the virtual floor. Minister.
Thanks very much, Noelle. And as you say, today is a really significant day, as it is always at this time of year, recognising the end of the Great War and what flowed from that, which in many ways has shaped the continent of Europe and indeed how the European Union as well views itself and its future. So I think it is timely that we're having the conversations we're having today, and I look forward to many people's questions. I'll try to be as frank and as direct as I can be in response to the questions you have later on. So I've been asked to speak for about 20 minutes or so, just outlining Irish priorities and Irish views in terms of our relationship with others in Europe, our relationship with Germany in particular, given who is on this VC, and also some of the questions around the future of Europe. So first of all, can I thank the European Movement Ireland and the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation, or Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung Foundation, for inviting me to speak today. And in particular, I want to welcome the Konrad-Adenauer Foundation to Ireland, and it's great to have Matthias joining us here from London, following the establishment of their new Irish branch. Thanks also to Ambassador Potzel for being with us to outline the work of the German Presidency and Germany's broader priorities for the future of the European Union. I know I speak for many when I acknowledge the incredible flexibility the German Presidency has shown in guiding the EU through what continues to be a very, very challenging period. The health crisis has had a profound effect on the Union and its member states. Coordination and cooperation at EU level has been and will continue to be essential to manage the crisis and ensuring our economies and our people recover from it, following the pretty deep scars that I know have been inflicted on many countries. As we're coming to the end of the German presidency, I would like to see today's event to use today's event to take stock of recent developments in the EU and to give an Irish perspective on the priorities of the EU as we enter a new year, which hopefully will be a better year than 2020, which has been such a challenging year on so many levels. But first, I'd like to comment briefly on the recent US election that Noelle has mentioned at the start. Joe Biden's victory is momentous for the president-elect himself, but it's also significant for the Irish American community. Joe Biden has a very strong ancestral and personal link with Ireland, and we're very proud of him. We look forward to working with the new administration to build on existing strong ties between the US and Ireland, and indeed the US and Europe as a whole. But in particular, I think there's an opportunity in terms of transatlantic relationships between the US and the EU, which I hope we will focus on. As President von der Leyen said at the weekend, now is an important moment to recommit to a transatlantic relationship where we work together to tackle pressing global issues like the pandemic and climate change based on shared values. Before I move on to talk about what the EU will look like post-Brexit, I would first like to mention the ongoing negotiations between the EU and the UK and the future relationship, because they are current and are in a very, very important, hopefully endgame phase in terms of finding agreement. We welcome the fact that talks have resumed and intensified. Reaching an agreement in the coming weeks is very difficult, but I also think it's doable. No deal is in nobody's interests. This intensification of negotiations is designed to close the gaps between the two sides. However, it is clear that significant gaps do still remain even at this late stage, including on the key outstanding issues of the level playing field, fair competition, governance and fisheries, as well as on goods and services provisions and on energy and energy markets. Fisheries is of the utmost political sensitivity and importance here in Ireland. It is vital that we do everything possible to protect our vulnerable coastal communities and fishers. In particular, it will be important to ensure that no member states are disproportionately affected by any new arrangements because of geographical positioning or because of reliance on certain stocks. And I think that is a big challenge for the European Union and our negotiators, to ensure that there is fair burden sharing in terms of any flexibility or compromises that are made. Any deal must involve compromise by both sides, of course. However, a deal cannot come at any price, and we've been very clear on that. The EU will negotiate to achieve a deal respecting the integrity of the single market and reflecting the long-term political and economic interests of the Union. Michel Barnier has Ireland's full support at this sensitive juncture of the talks, and we know that he also has the support of our European partners too. And in fact, the solidarity that has been shown through the Brexit process, I think has taken many people by surprise, and I think is a really good lesson for the EU. When there is a collective interest that is being negotiated by a task force on behalf of the European Union, solidarity and unity of purpose really gives us an extraordinary strength in those negotiations, which has been the case for the last 4.5 years in Brexit. It's important that all sides make the best use of the limited time remaining to reach an agreement in all of our interests. On the subject of the implementation of the withdrawal agreement and the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland, Ireland's position is that the only appropriate channel for resolving any issues around the implementation of the protocol is through the structures already provided for and negotiated as part of the withdrawal agreement, the Joint Committee and Specialised Committee established for that purpose. We continue to participate in these committees as a member of the EU delegation, with the most recent meeting of the Specialised Committee having taken place last week on the 5th of November. And we continue to stress to the UK in this forum and in bilateral contacts the importance of the urgent and effective implementation of the protocol. I think there's only 50 days left between now and the end of the year. We have a lot to do in that period. The protocol remains the best and the only way to address the unique circumstances of a shared island. It is absolutely crucial for confidence across the EU and for agreement on the UK-EU future relationship that the protocol is implemented in full and in good faith. The clarity and stability this will provide is crucial for Northern Ireland businesses and indeed for an all-island economy. Ireland supports the EU infringement proceedings in relation to the UK's internal market bill. This approach is in keeping with the measured, firm and calm approach the EU continues to take. Despite current challenges, Ireland's clear interest is in the closest possible future relationship between the EU and the UK. However, this relationship will not be as close as it is today because it can't be. Nothing has happened in the negotiations. Nothing that happens in the negotiations will change the fact that in 50 days' time, the UK will be outside of the EU single market and customs union, and that means change. This means significant and lasting change, whether there is a deal or no deal. The question is the extent of the disruption, and of course, we can limit that if we manage to get a trade deal and the future relationship agreement in place. But we will face this challenge together with our EU partners. On the 9th of September, the government published our Brexit Readiness Action Plan, Our budget 2021 includes unprecedented Brexit support measures. Our ports and airports will be ready for the significant increase in checks and controls on the 1st of January. In fact, we've spent over 30 million euros in Dublin Port alone, putting in new infrastructure. The UK has chosen its own path, and we respect that. But Ireland will remain at the heart of Europe and the European Union and its single market, with the security and the stability and the certainty that that brings. Of course, Brexit negotiations are not the only challenge that we face collectively. I'm very heartened to see the solidarity shown by the EU and its member states in dealing with this pandemic. This solidarity resulted in the delivery of unprecedented financial supports to help member states' recovery. The agreement reached by the European Council in July for the MFF/Recovery Fund package, totaling 1.82 trillion, is truly historic. It demonstrates that Europe can work collectively to deal with this once-in-a-generation crisis. Ireland supports the German Presidency's approach, and we look forward to swift agreement on the MFF Recovery Fund package so that it can be fully implemented to help member states recover from the pandemic. Ireland welcomes the EU vaccine strategy and EU procurement exercise. An effective and safe vaccine is our best bet to achieve a permanent solution in responding to this pandemic. And of course, we've had some encouraging news in recent days, but let's not get carried away. There's still a lot of work to do yet. I'm sure that you've all seen that Ireland has decided to align with the new EU Council recommendation on a traffic light system for international travel. It's clear that Europe needs to do more to improve coordination in relation to travel restrictions arising in the context of the pandemic. Equally importantly, we have to safeguard freedom of movement, though, for our citizens. We are actively considering now restrictions such as quarantine or restricted movement and how they can be eased with a greater use of testing to be more exact, but also to continue to follow public health advice while at the same time using technology and testing capacity to be able to facilitate international travel. While much of the focus this year has been on fighting the pandemic and its immediate consequences, we're now also working to rebuild our economy and to ensure renewed sustainable progress and prosperity for Europe and its citizens. The pandemic has brought to the fore the central role of digital connectivity and technology. It has highlighted the importance of current and future connectivity needs, not just in city centres, but also across our suburbs, towns, and rural communities. In other words, everybody needs to be connected from a technology point of view if we're going to avoid isolation and leaving people behind. Ireland is supportive of the ambitions of the Commission in its digital and data strategies. We believe that they are more important than ever to drive digital transformation and to steer Europe towards economic recovery. And so we welcome the adoption of European Council conclusions on single market, industrial policy and digital at the beginning of October. Ireland supports the vision set out in the European Green Deal, and we've said that many times, and we are enthusiasts for the level of ambition that has been outlined, as well as the ambition to increase the EU 2030 climate target to at least 55% greenhouse gas emissions reduction compared to 1990 levels, and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050, which will be some achievement. It represents a comprehensive new cross-sectoral approach to climate change, addressing the environmental challenges faced by the EU and member states, and is consistent with our national approach too, and indeed our programme for government, which has increased the levels of ambition in the climate space in a very, very dramatic way. Ireland looks forward to the December European Council, when EU heads of states and government will return to this issue. Although management of the COVID-19 crisis is likely to occupy much of the agenda over the coming months, we should not lose sight of the importance of the longer-term role of the European Union. Like so many times in the past, the EU's future will be determined by the strength of its recovery from this crisis. I'm confident that the EU and its member states will work together to achieve a successful recovery and be stronger as a result of it on the other side. The proposed Conference on the Future of Europe will provide an opportunity to consider the challenges we face and our policy priorities in addressing them. Together, in a time like this, our citizens do not want to see us debating the ins and outs of processes and procedures. They want to see real action and real issues addressed. And so the focus of the conference should remain on policy issues rather than institutional issues and mechanisms. I think one of the big challenges, and Noelle will relate to this, to actually get ordinary people and businesses engaged in EU debates is to actually ensure that we are talking about things that impact on people's lives in a very direct way, as opposed to institutional change or restructuring or treaties or EU legislation. While all of those things are really important, we've got to make sure that we engage in a language of the streets, if you like, to ensure that people realise the importance of EU membership. And in many ways, Brexit, from an Irish mindset perspective, has been that extraordinary reminder of the value of EU membership. And I think how we continue to manage the COVID-19 crisis is a big opportunity to reinforce the politics of EU solidarity and its importance for all of our well-being. Our priorities for a post-COVID-19 EU should remain closely aligned with our priorities pre-COVID-19, as defined in the European Council strategy agenda. However, the methods, means, and timeframes for achieving these priorities will require additional flexibility as we work to ensure all the member states achieve a full recovery together. We can't leave anybody behind, regardless of how they've been impacted and hit by this pandemic. On the rule of law, the rule of law is a core value in the European Union. The EU needs the necessary tools to monitor the rule of law across the member states and effectively respond to challenges when they arise. And this is difficult and awkward stuff politically, but the European Union must face up to it if we're going to remain credible in terms of our value system, both at home and abroad. We welcome the publication of the Commission's first annual Rule of Law report, and we thank the Commission for their work in delivering this in spite of the challenges presented by COVID-19 and all of the other distractions that have been there. We engaged with the Commission on the preparation of the Ireland chapter of the report, and we welcome the independent and impartial review of rule of law in Ireland. We will remain open to dialogue on the rule of law, and we encourage our fellow member states to do the same. Ireland strongly supports a strong and effective rule of law proposal to protect the EU budget. We support the recent agreement reached with the European Parliament on this. Once the regime of conditionality is introduced, Ireland will support its fair, proportionate, and effective implementation. Before I conclude, and I know I haven't had an opportunity, but I will certainly in questions, if people want to focus on that, to focus on the EU's influence globally and in other parts of the world, because I think that's a big part of our future thinking, not just in terms of COVID management domestically and in other parts of the world that need our help, but in so many other areas as well. And with a change of administration in the US, I think much of the focus of that new US administration will be on domestic politics because of the extraordinary divisions across the United States right now. And so I do think that the EU has got to step up and become a more proactive and more influential global player in so many areas. But before I conclude, given the subject of today's event, I would like to reflect briefly on Ireland's relationship with Germany. Germany is an indispensable partner for Ireland, both in Europe and in the wider world. Over recent years, prior to Brexit and even more so since Brexit, we have been working to strengthen our partnership. I personally count the German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas as amongst my closest colleagues in the European Union. My objectives for Ireland and Germany were set out in a new strategy for Germany, which I published in 2018. The strategy contained 23 specific recommendations designed to revitalise our connections for the 21st century, to deepen our relationship with the federal government in Berlin and to widen our relationship with the peoples, governments and parliaments of the 16 very different German states. Almost all of this strategy has already been implemented. We have put real resources behind the strengthening of our Irish-German relations. The embassy in Berlin is almost double the size that it was 4 years ago, and now includes representatives of 3 other government departments as well as my own. We've also opened a new Consulate General in Frankfurt, as many of you will be aware. What makes the Irish-German partnership so powerful and so genuine is that we share the same core values: a commitment to the UN, to the multilateral world order, to human rights and to the peaceful resolution of conflicts, as well as a belief in open societies with equality, diversity and opportunity at their centre. We don't have to persuade one another of these values. I think they're already in our DNA and they are learnt from our own experience of history. It couldn't be more fitting that, as Ireland takes up its seat on the UN Security Council on the 1st of January, we will be passed the baton by Germany and by my friend Heiko Maas in the coming weeks. Germany is and will remain a key and indispensable partner for Ireland as we seek to promote European recovery and defend those core values, such as the rule of law and multilateralism, which is an integral part of building a better and safer Europe, but also a better and safer world. So can I thank everybody for their attention, and I look forward to hearing Ambassador Potzel's remarks, and in particular, I look forward to taking your questions, and as I say, I'll try to provide brief and direct answers to as many of them as I can. So thank you very much, Noelle.
Thank you very much, Minister Coveney, for that tour de force and the amount of questions that are coming in. I probably should have asked, how long can you stay with us? But no, I'm very aware of the demands on your time. Thank you, Minister. An incredible wide-ranging address looking at COVID and, of course, from a European Movement Ireland perspective, very much welcome your comments, not only on the importance of the EU stepping up globally and doing more, and also that importance of engaging people and debating on the ground the importance of Ireland's relationship in the EU and how we go about shaping that relationship in the future and having the important dialogue and conversation to influence that outcome. Thank you very much, Minister, and I'm delighted now to call our next speaker to the virtual floor, Ambassador Deike Potzel, well known to all of us here in Ireland. She has been Germany's ambassador to Ireland since 2017 and is an extremely experienced diplomat, having served with the German Federal Foreign Office since 1995 in a variety of postings, including Bonn, Berlin, Singapore and Tehran. And now we're delighted to have her here with us in Ireland. Ambassador Potzel, a very good morning to you. And
thank you so very much, Noelle. Thank you very much for having me, and a big thank you to EMI for organizing this, and to CAS, of course. Mr. Brana, a very warm welcome again. A wholeheartedly warm thanks to Minister Coveney. Thank you so much for those very warm words also about German-Irish relations. Now, to everybody who's listening in, I will have to say a couple of times during my talk, as the Minister said, which hopefully is not boring you too much, but it also really is a wonderful sign of how close we are. And the Minister was speaking about joint values, common values, and a joint agenda. So you will see that, I think, in my talk too. Together for Europe's recovery. This is the motto of our presidency, because we feel what we need to manage the current incredible crisis are solidarity, a willingness to compromise, pragmatism, and international cooperation. Germany wants, in the future, a stronger, a more innovative, a fair, a sustainable Europe, a Europe of security and common values, a strong Europe in the world. The EU, to us, is the most valuable peace project that lays the foundation for the well-being, the prosperity and security of EU countries and for our citizens. And we must make, and we want to make every effort to deliver for the citizens and to continuously develop this great project together. Our presidency focuses on 9 priorities, but they also describe our hopes and visions for the future of Europe. I'm not going to look into each one of those 9, but obviously, first and foremost, overcoming the consequences of the COVID-19 pandemic and managing economic recovery is a core task of our presidency. We need to counter the significant challenge at every level, as our Chancellor said, socially, economically, and politically. The European Council's agreement in July, the Minister said it, truly was a historical one. And the EU will, with this, make an unprecedented effort to support the recovery of EU member states. The compromise reached yesterday with the European Parliament is, as our Finance Minister, Minister Scholz, called it, an important breakthrough. And Foreign Minister Maas spoke of a ray of hope for European citizens and businesses. And it's now up to the Council and the European Parliament to endorse it. Time is really of the essence. We have to make sure that the money can flow by the beginning of 2021. Likewise, it's important to keep improving coordination of measures within the EU. EU efforts have already led to better communication and cooperation between member states and allowed us to make progress on key challenges. During the remaining months of our presidency, we will definitely continue to do everything we can do to further strengthen this spirit. And we are also in the process of identifying lessons learned for an even more effective crisis management in the future. This includes strengthening European sovereignty and capacity to act in key areas. Now, not surprisingly, the second most important task is concluding the negotiations on the future relationship with the United Kingdom. The Chancellor said agreement is in everyone's interest. The EU is united in fighting for an agreement, but we must also be prepared for a no deal. And very importantly here in Ireland, for Ireland, I think the Chancellor also made clear at several occasions, we won't let Ireland down, but will continue to stick together in these negotiations. Our fundamental position remains unchanged. We strive for a close and an ambitious and comprehensive new partnership between the EU and the UK in the future. And while we continue to do so, we share the view that we cannot accept any deal. So we really urgently now need more movement from the British side in core areas like the Minister mentioned, level playing field, governance, fisheries, for instance. But it still remains true, we must be prepared for all scenarios, including a no-deal one, so we really have to be prepared. But in any case, it is also our clear expectation that the UK government implements the withdrawal agreement in its entirety. When it comes to Northern Ireland and the single market, the UK's draft internal market bill would be a clear breach of the withdrawal agreement and thus violate international law. Given that the UK did not take back the contentious elements of the draft bill, we supported the Commission in opening an infringement procedure. Now, unity in all this remains important, and to keep negotiating, we feel calmly and focused, and this is what we keep doing as the EU. Now, if there's one particularly positive development post-Brexit referendum, and the Minister spoke about that, it's, as I see it, an even more stronger commitment to closer ties between Germany and Ireland. And the Minister referred to the review that the Irish government produced. We, on the other hand, initiated a so-called like-minded initiative, focusing on countries that we felt we want to work even closer with, and Ireland is one of them. And on the basis of the review and our like-minded initiative, our two countries produced the so-called joint action plan, detailing very concrete projects where our two countries work closer together. And a lot of it has been implemented already. So we are up for a review of that joint action plan, which will then be discussed in state secretaries' consultations, which will take place next February. And I'm very happy to talk about this in more detail in the Q&A later on. Now, during our presidency, but also in the longer term, we also focus on other topics, such as, very important to us, migration and asylum policy. The Chancellor said recently, we want to move forward. We have as she said, humanitarian duty to do that. The burden is on Europe that there is no agreement yet. The Commission proposal is well worthy of a discussion. Compromise is needed, and each member state will have to contribute to a fair solution. So we really need to set the course for a sustainable European refugee and migration policy. We need a restart based on solidarity and shared responsibility. And we aim for a common European asylum system, which ensures responsibility sharing, efficiently curbs secondary migration, lives up to humanitarian standards and fundamental European values, and truly alleviates the burden on frontline member states. So during our presidency, we aim to find a political agreement on the cornerstones of the new pact, and hopefully that will be achievable at the Home Affairs Council on 4th of December. Another important topic, and the Minister again talked about it, is the strengthening of the rule of law, which is again very, very important to us. In its Council conclusions on the MFF, the European Council has for the first time clearly underlined the importance of the respect of the rule of law in the MFF and has agreed to introduce a mechanism of conditionality to protect the EU budget. And we reached a compromise with the European Parliament on that just recently as well. What we feel we need is a preventive and forward-looking mechanism allowing for an open and constructive dialogue on this crucial issue. We want to overcome the internal divisions related to this topic. We want to reach a common understanding of the rule of law and make the rule of law something that unites us. The new rule of law dialogue was kickstarted in September with a debate in the Council, and we will talk about it. And now in November, a first set of country-specific discussions will take place. Other issues that are dear to our hearts are climate protection and digitization. I will not go into the details here for time-constrained reasons. And I just want to say a few words about Europe's role in the world. We really feel it's important to strengthen the EU's overall capacity as a powerful foreign policy actor at a global level. We want to become, as we call it, more sovereign. Our foreign minister recently said we don't want to be patronized. We want to go our own ways and shape geopolitics in global cooperation, using effective multilateralism, and the EU needs to make sure to measure up to our responsibility as a global power, he said. We also aim at strengthening the transatlantic relationship as an integral part of the EU's foreign policy consensus. The Chancellor yesterday talked about the treasure of our relations when congratulating President-elect Joe Biden, saying that we know we have to take on more responsibility as Germans, as Europeans, and she said we're working on it. She also cited core joint challenges like climate change, the pandemic, terrorism, trade and economy, which we need to tackle side by side with our US friends. And our Foreign Minister Maas said that he hoped that after the election, the West plays as a team again and promised concrete plans on how to strike a new deal. And we are talking Paris Accord, we're talking China, we're talking Russia, Middle East, Iran, Afghanistan. There are so many issues there. I think I will leave it at this here. I could say more about relations with China and also strengthening our partnership with Africa, so very important to us. And there are so many other issues that I could tap on, but I will leave it at that. And I thank you for listening to me and for being with us today. And I'm looking forward to the Q&A session now. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deike. And I hope you'll agree, ladies and gentlemen, two outstanding tour de force presentations, which have justifiably led to a great level of interest in Q&A. So I'm going to plow on because we have a lot of questions coming in, so no surprise there. And Minister, firstly, if I might come to you, as you mentioned in your address, and you very very importantly reminded us that that Brexit clock is continuing to tick, less than 50 days to go. And our first question has come in from Simon Carswell, Public Affairs Editor with the Irish Times. And he's asking you, Minister, as to whether you share the concerns of Arlene Foster and Michelle O'Neill that there is a real threat to food supplies into Northern Ireland, and the concerns of the Irish haulage industry that limited road truck capacity on direct ferries to mainland Europe could affect the flow of goods to and from the Republic as a result of border checks on EU-UK borders at British ports. I read that out word for word.
Two easy questions there from Simon. Yeah, look, I mean, first of all, you know, the issue of supermarket supply chains in and out of Northern Ireland has been something that has been discussed in the specialised committee and in the joint committee for some time. So, you know, I've raised this issue, having spoken to some of the supermarket chains and their Northern Ireland teams. You know, so I spoke to the head of ASDA in Northern Ireland recently. And so, you know, for some of the big British supermarket chains, they have literally tens of thousands of products that are being manufactured or packaged or assembled in GB and then are being transported into Northern Ireland for shops there. So, you know, we've been talking about this issue for months, quite frankly. It's a difficult issue because at the end of the transition period, things change. And what the protocol does is it effectively provides for Northern Ireland becoming a de facto extension of the EU single market for goods. And so when goods come into Northern Ireland, where there is a risk of those goods leaking across the border, because of course there'll be no checks on the border on the island, then the integrity of the EU single market does need to be protected under the protocol. That's clear, and it's a legal obligation. And so the issue around SBS checks, which is sanitary and phytosanitary checks, regulatory checks, the levels of inspection that are needed to be credible and compliant are what is at issue here. And you know, I think that what we're seeing in the specialised committee in particular is a pragmatism from both sides to try and do as much as we can to accommodate the realities of the pressures that flow from a protocol being implemented in full, and at the same time ensuring that we are fully compliant with that protocol. And trying to get the balance right there is important. What we're not doing here is renegotiating the protocol. What we're doing in the specialised committee and in the joint committee is discussing in a way that both sides tries to recognise the difficulties of the other and taking a pragmatic and sensible approach to implementation. We're trying to solve as many problems as we can, whether that's on VAT, whether it's on customs, whether it's on an EU presence in Northern Ireland, whether it's on supply chains in particular for food and for perishable goods, whether it's on issues like state aid, in particular state aid around agriculture and agri-food products, because of course with no border infrastructure north-south or south-north, we have to make sure that an all-island economy can function in a way that is fair from a competition perspective and a state aid perspective and so on. So, and that, by the way, is some of the problems without focusing on the extra problems that arise if there's no trade deal in terms of avoiding tariffs, tariff application and potential quotas on certain goods. So I mean, what I would say is I can certainly understand the issue that Michelle O'Neill and Arlene Foster have outlined in their paper. I've spoken to many of the businesses involved, but don't forget, this isn't just a problem for Northern Ireland linked to the protocol. It's also an issue for the island as a whole, because of course some of these big UK supermarket multinationals have a presence in Northern Ireland and GB, but also in the Republic of Ireland, if you take Tesco, for example. So what we're trying to do here is implement the protocol in full and in a credible way, but also to try to look at flexibilities where possible, recognizing that there is a need for pragmatism here to try to ensure that supply chains can function in the context of the implementation of the protocol as best they can. And that's an ongoing discussion, which certainly the Irish government is contributing to in a way that recognizes that this is a genuine issue. It's not being used as a negotiating lever or anything like that to try and prize compromise in other areas. It's a genuine issue around trade across the Irish Sea, coming from GB into Northern Ireland. But it's also any solutions that we come up with and agree to have got to protect the integrity of the EU single market for everybody, as well as trying to provide pragmatic solutions to what are real issues. In terms of direct access to the rest of the single market from Ireland, I think it's important to say, and I mean, I've met haulers on this. In fact, I think it was last week, we had quite a long session on a VC with the Irish Road Haulers Association. But I think it is important to give some reassurance here. There has been significant increase in capacity on direct ferry links from Ireland to, if you want to call it, mainland Europe, but it's the rest of the single market. And today, less than 50% of the capacity on those direct routes is being used. And that's roll on, roll off, as well as low capacity in terms of container capacity and so on ships. So, new services have been announced out of Cork, out of Waterford, out of Rosslare, and out of Dublin. And of course, there is also extra capacity. If the ferry operators choose to, they can switch capacity from Irish Sea ferry routes to direct connections with the rest of the single market. If the demand pushes them in that direction, they're more than willing to do that. So, the Irish government's position here is we're going to keep talking to ferry operators. We're going to keep talking to hauliers, exporters, and importers. If we need to make an intervention, we will. But at the moment, the conversation certainly with ferry operators is, they want to be able to use the capacity that's there. They have the capacity to increase capacity further on those routes, and we've seen some new announcements in recent days around new daily direct ferry links. So let's wait and see what happens on the 1st of January in terms of the extent of the disruption to the UK land bridge and getting goods to and from the island of Ireland from the rest of the EU single market, from France and Germany and Spain and Portugal and the Netherlands and Belgium and all the other countries that we have big trade with. But what we're doing at the moment is we're encouraging companies to look at their contingency plans around supply chains and to actually start using the excess capacity that is there in terms of direct ferry traffic, which may well be very useful from the 1st of January, when the paperwork and the delays and the potential disruption that may impact the current, seamless and efficient land bridge that's there for a period of time. But just to reassure people, we are satisfied that there is significant capacity unused, ready to be taken up. And there is also the opportunity for ferry companies to add significantly to that capacity if it's necessary to do so from the 1st of January.
Great, thank you, Minister. And Simon, I think you have a very comprehensive answer to your questions there from Minister Coveney. Thank you. If I may, because lots of questions coming in, Ambassador, I'm going to group two for you. I'm going to give you two for the price of one, if that's okay. Question from Paula Campbell has asked, in terms of what do you think, Ambassador, would be the next steps in terms of deepening the relationship between Germany and Ireland on the back of the momentum achieved by the 2018 Ireland in Germany and that wider footprint strategy that I think you referenced in your remarks? And equally, Darrell Lawler has asked, Deike, what are the best opportunities for cooperation between Ireland and Germany that you foresee within the EU multi-annual financial framework 2021 to 2027, which of course is very welcome to see the developments in that this week as well. Ambassador.
Okay. Thank you so much for those questions. Very interesting questions indeed. As I said, we are in the midst of revising our joint action plan, where we will hopefully come up with more projects of where and how to work very concretely together. And there are so many issues that we are on the same par kind of thing. It is in a bilateral sense, but also in how we deal with international questions and issues. And the minister was already saying that we will pass on the baton to Ireland in the United Nations Security Council. And that is not just like a sentence as such, a saying as such, because we are already talking to each other in detail about the issues that are on the table at the moment and that needs focusing on. It's wonderful to see this very close cooperation between the several ministries involved and all that. But I think there is such a vast opportunity for deepening our relations in every aspect, really. Be it in the business sense, because I also feel that our businesses, which are already working closely together, and we are the fourth biggest trading partner of Ireland, but there is still potential that we can tap on. And now with Britain leaving the EU and this important market becoming maybe less accessible for Ireland as well, it is, I think, worthwhile to look at European markets, and I'm not just saying just the German market, but also to other European countries for supply chains and also for doing business with us. And if I can encourage everyone, language is not an issue. Most people in Germany do speak okay English, so you will get around. You don't even have to go to the Goethe Institute here in Dublin to learn German, but you can get by with English. But also, like in the cultural sense, also in the political sense, I would love to see, and the minister quoted from the review, a closer political exchange also between parliamentarians, for instance. We have seen really nice encounters there, and a lot of things also kind of were produced in those joint visits. And like, for instance, the German Federal Parliament gave 100,000 euros in its budget this year for reconstruction and refurbishing of the Heinrich Böll House on Eckl Island. So things like that are very concrete results of this getting together, let alone talking about the huge issues that we were both talking, the minister and I, in our talks there, the huge issues of the future. And I think that is extremely important. In terms of the next concrete steps, as I said, implementing the joint action plan with those different formats that we created with the state secretary consultations and other things are very concrete steps that we will take. Cooperation in the UN Security Council and all that, very concrete measures that we are looking at. So I'm very hopeful, and I'm delighted, I have to say again, to be here at a time when so much is moving on in our bilateral relationships. Thank you.
Absolutely, Deike, and that's due in no small measure to the efforts and the engagement and the very hard work of your good self. So thank you very much for that, Minister. I think this is fantastic. Actually, we're three for one, Minister, on this particular set of questions. Great questions coming in from Kirsty Hughes, the director of the Scottish Centre on European Relations, and she is asking, Minister, the question as to whether do you believe the UK has any influence on the EU and its decisions now that it is on the outside? And would you be open to the UK rejoining the EU, and would it get any opt-outs the second time around?
Is that one of 3 questions or just the one?
Well, the one person, 3 questions. So you can. I'll
Right.
tell you what. To be fair, you can pick whichever one you'd like to focus on.
No. Look, I mean, actually, a very important question because, from an Irish perspective, the EU without the UK is a very different place.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a different place for everybody, but particularly for Ireland. And we're going to miss them, quite frankly. There's been EU skepticism in the UK for many, many years, when I lived there through to now, and unfortunately that resulted in the choice that they made to leave the European Union, which was, to my mind, hugely disappointing on so many levels. But we've got to respect that decision. But the future relationship between the EU and the UK is really, really important, and we're going to stay close to our closest neighbour, even though they're going to be outside of the European Union. We're going to look after and protect the peace process together. We're going to implement a lot of things as a result of the complexity of Brexit, hopefully together, even though it's been a very difficult process. But Ireland's place and voice and influence in the EU now needs new thinking, because certainly some of the issues that we would have been arguing for were, I wouldn't say on the coattails of British influence, but certainly were significantly helped by that, in terms of the functioning of a single market, our approaches on taxation, approaches towards globalization, and so having that British voice no longer present in EU negotiations, I think is already very noticeable, actually, and as a result, Ireland. We were doing it anyway, but I think there's an even more focused approach now to building the kind of friendships and relationships and alliances and partnerships with other EU member states like Germany and France and many others. We've built a much more structured dialogue and engagement with the Baltic and Nordic countries, for example, as well. And on certain issues have very close alliances with different EU countries on different things. But so if you look at Ireland geographically and you look at the EU and how it works, you see geographical caucuses almost in the European Union. So you have the B4, you have the Nordic and Baltic states, you have the Benelux countries, you have the Mediterranean countries, you have France and Germany that are just so big and powerful that they're kind of part of everything, and working with everybody, and that's of course as it should be. But then you look at Ireland and you say, where does Ireland fit in to these regional based power blocks within the EU? And I think it's a really strategic question that needs to be answered. And I think that's one of the reasons why I appreciate the relationship that I have with Heiko Maas so much, because he has made such an effort to reach out to smaller countries, to reinforce the view that it's the strength of the argument in the EU that should be most influential, rather than the strength of economies or military capacity and so on. And that's why Ireland has the capacity to change the EU, just like Germany does. And we speak as friends and partners in those efforts. So I just wanted to kind of that's the context of this. But the question, which I think is a really good question coming from Scotland, is what's the influence of the UK? I think it's significantly diminished, but it's still there. The UK is a big player in world affairs. Not what they once were, but it's a medium-sized country. It's a strong economy. It has a very significant history in many parts of the world that sustains a certain influence today. And so for us, the EU and the UK should be close partners in the future. So if for example, and we spoke earlier, both both the ambassador and myself, about transatlantic relations under a Biden administration. I mean, for me, if we start to move back into the space, which I hope we will, of talking about a transatlantic trade and investment partnership between the EU and the US, in my view, the UK needs to be part of that discussion, because they too are very much part of that transatlantic discussion. So hopefully Ireland has been quite a successful bridge at times between the EU and the US in terms of policy thinking and ambition. But I think Ireland is also going to be, I hope, a bridge between the EU and the UK in the future to ensure that UK thinking on global affairs in places like the Security Council, supporting multilateralism, building, alliances and ambition around climate and climate change action, protecting the rule of law, development partnerships, particularly in continents like Africa and parts of Asia. These are areas where we're stronger together. But in terms of shaping the EU and EU decisions, the UK is now outside of the room. There's no other way to say it. EU budgets and the whole future of the EU debate is one that certainly will, take note of British perspectives, but in a very different way than we've seen in the past, which I'm afraid I think is a loss for both sides, because the EU no longer will have the benefit of UK perspectives, and certainly I think the EU will have lost significant influence in the context of EU solidarity and membership. And I know this creates very difficult political questions for Scotland, where there's a significant majority of the population would like to stay in the European Union, and wants to maintain and sustain EU influence, and so on. So, look, these are difficult issues for the United Kingdom as a whole to grapple with, in places like Northern Ireland and Scotland and Wales, where attitudes to the EU perhaps are quite different to attitudes to the EU in many parts of England, so Ireland needs to tread carefully in terms of intervening in those UK debates, because they are British debates. But our own perspectives, I think, are pretty well known in terms of our closeness to the EU and why we think it's so valuable.
Absolutely, Minister. Ambassador, did you want to come in on that at all from the German perspective?
Again, I could echo what the minister said.
Okay, that's good.
We are very much on the same page on this. We really feel it's important to have a close relationship with the United Kingdom. We are losing a very good friend, a very good partner, and we are very saddened by the fact that they are leaving us. So we need to really find also new structures of how to engage with Great Britain, with the United Kingdom. Not to lose touch, but to really include them in important international debates, of course, and also to strengthen cultural links, political links, and also economic links even further. Not to let go of it, but to really do our best to develop our friendship. As the minister said, it's it's not always easy. If you look at the feeling by some British towards the continent, but we really need to up our game even more so now, to really make that friendship grow and to make that partnership work in a very close and stable manner. And this is what we are trying to do within the EU, but also bilaterally.
Of course, and vitally important that we continue to do that. If I may, and very conscious of some of the timing constraints, we just have another question, I think, coming in from James Freeney, UK journalist. and he wants to know, so Minister, again, apologies for you, and if we could keep it'd be great just to get a brief answer, perhaps if it's possible, but when does the Irish government expect to see at least some text from Barnier's team? Why hasn't there been much progress thus far? It seems to be like Groundhog Day. I think he's referring to Brexit there.
Yeah, and if I might say that does seem to be a perspective coming from one side of the argument. I think the barriers to progress are well understood. The outstanding issues. Well, there's a lot of outstanding issues, but the significant obstacles to getting a future relationship agreement in place, not just in terms of a trade agreement, by the way, that avoids tariffs and quotas, but also in so many other areas, from aviation to road haulage to judicial cooperation to data and data protection to services and financial services. It's a long list, I think there has been a lot of good work done in many of these areas. There's been 11 different negotiating streams all moving forward together. But the big obstacle to progress has been the ability to get agreement between the two sides on a level playing field and fair competition for the future, because that has to be effectively the foundation stone that's needed to put a free trade agreement in place. The EU will never sign up to a free trade agreement that doesn't involve tariffs and quotas unless there is reassurance that we're going to be operating on the basis of fair competition. And what I mean by that is, we can't have a situation where the UK can simply decide to target state aid at sections of its economy that goes way beyond what the EU is capable of doing, and therefore create competitive advantage for British companies selling into the EU single market tariff-free. We can't agree that. That's pretty obvious as to why. And I think the UK understands that. The UK, this time last year, signed up to a political declaration which had a chapter on the need for a level playing field and fair competition, and went through that in some detail. And the British government agreed to that, and was part of that text. So this is nothing new. So not only do we need agreement, I think, on key principles around fair competition, of course, respecting British sovereignty. That's a given here. Britain is leaving the European Union, and we have to respect that. But there does need to be a commitment around fair competition, and then there needs to be a governance model that can deal with disputes if and when they arise. So if people don't keep their word, or if people break the rules, or if there's a dispute around whether rules are being broken, we have to have an independent mechanism that both sides sign up to solve those problems. And so that has been an ask of the EU for a year. It's not like this isn't in the last few days. And I think some progress has been made in this area, particularly around the sort of points of principle around what fair competition means, and the governance model around how that gets enforced and how disputes get resolved, I think, is important. And then the second issue that's really difficult is fish. The two sides' starting point on fish in terms of expectation and ask are a long way apart. For the EU, and I think they're right, a resolution on fish is in the context of resolving a whole load of other things. So if the UK is asking for, and they are, access into the EU energy market, well, then the EU says, well, yeah, we'll facilitate that, but we're looking for access into your market or your fishing grounds in the context of managing stocks in a sustainable way and ensuring that we have answers for our fishermen, just like you need answers for yours. So this is like we agreed, both sides, that fish would not be isolated from the rest of the negotiation, and that as the UK needs facilitation from the EU in many areas, and the EU wants to provide that, the EU is also looking for facilitation and understanding from the UK on some sensitive areas, and fish is one of them. Certainly from an Irish perspective, it is too. Otherwise, we'll see industries and coastal communities decimated. So, you know, I don't believe that that either side can get 100% of what it's looking for in fish. I think there's a need for compromise on both sides to land on a compromise that both sides can live with in the context of other areas where flexibility needs to be provided and shown as well. So, you know, James's question, what timeline are we on? You know, I think we may well be likely to go into next week on these negotiations. Obviously, we're keeping very close to the task force, and I think it's helpful not to make public comment on the detail of obstacles or progress right now. And I think the fact that we have sort of media silence from the two negotiating teams is probably a good sign. But I think we're not there yet. You know, this is. But what I would say is that the UK government understand only too well what's needed for an agreement here. I don't believe the EU ask is unreasonable, and as I say, the EU also needs to show some compromise to accommodate many British asks. But I think the two key areas that require balanced and fair solutions right now are level playing field issues and the governance around that, and fish. And if we can overcome those two issues, in particular fish, which is very emotive and very political, then I think we can get a deal done. But I mean, I have to say, if we can't get a deal done, it will represent an extraordinary failure of politics and diplomacy, and the cost of that for the British economy, for the Irish economy, for the people we represent as governments from the 1st of January onwards is pretty sobering, I have to say. And that's why I believe we will get a deal, because the cost of not getting a deal, particularly for Britain and Ireland, whatever about the rest of the EU, I think they can manage it. Certainly Germany can. But everybody wants a deal here, and the cost of failure is what will motivate people, hopefully, to agree to sensible compromise that, as I say, both sides can move forward in the back of. The other thing I'd say to James is that all of the focus at the moment is on whether we can get a trade deal or not. Actually, it's bigger than that, because if a trade deal is possible, in other words, if we can resolve the fishing question and the level playing field question, and we get a platform that allows us to put a trade deal in place, that then also opens the door to resolve many of these other hugely important issues as well. But I think the corollary is also true. If we don't get a trade deal, and if this becomes a political communications management exercise around the blame game of who's at fault and so on, then I think getting agreement in many of these other areas, which are really important, becomes much more difficult in the context of the acrimony and tension politically between the EU and the UK in the aftermath of a failed negotiation. So there's a lot at stake here, and I think the negotiating teams know that, and that's why they're as focused and as tight-lipped as they are at the moment in their efforts to get the compromises that are needed.
Okay. No, that's fantastic, Minister. Very comprehensive answer. So you'd be broadly hopeful that there will be positive white smoke, and which is important.
Well,
to have.
Don't overplay that optimism now. I mean, like, okay. I think it is quite possible that this could fall apart and we don't get a deal. I think that wouldn't shock me at all. But if you're asking me to call it, I think we're more likely to get a deal than not. But I think it's unlikely this week. But hopefully I'll be proven wrong. I think it's likely to move into next week. But at that point, you know, the timelines start to get very tight. I mean, there's only 50 days left this year. And of course, there's a ratification process that takes a lot of time. So you know, we don't have much time left. And I think this week and next week are crucial, really. If we don't have a deal at some point next week, I think we have real problems.
Hopefully that won't be the case, and I appreciate your note of caution, Minister. I was probably getting a bit excited and carried away between the good news, hopefully on the vaccine front, and Cork.
Yeah, it's a bit like COVID vaccines. Everybody wants to believe it.
Yeah, and Cork pulling one over on Kerry, which probably the significance of that maybe won't resonate with our international audience, but I know you and I appreciate.
Well, at least that actually happened. So
exactly.
Let's hope the other two can happen on vaccines and on Brexit too.
And Brexit too. I know. Well, listen, on that very optimistic note, with sincere apologies, ladies and gentlemen, to our audience, we have an absolute, I think I've about 17 questions left, and from various ambassadors and colleagues that would love to continue with the questioning.
Noelle, if people do have questions, whether they be specific or general, if you want to send them on to us, we can provide written answers for people, particularly for ambassadors. Be happy to do that.
That would be fantastic, Minister and Ambassador. Thank you both so much, because I'm just very conscious of time, and Minister and Ambassador, your schedules. So it just leaves me, ladies and gentlemen, to draw today's proceedings to a conclusion. And if I may, on your behalf, thank our distinguished panel of speakers. Still one of the busiest people in Ireland, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Defence, Simon Coveney. We are so very grateful, Minister, for you giving of your time. And if I might say on all our behalf, we wish you the very best of luck. Ní neart go cur le chéile, and may the force be with you in the important weeks ahead, as you have outlined. And a massive thank you as well to our good friend. I think we're absolutely blessed in Ireland to have fantastic ambassadors, EU ambassadors representing their member states here in Ireland. And Germany's ambassador to Ireland, Deike Potzel, is an outstanding representative of that group. So Ambassador Potzel, thank you for all your support and your engagement and all the incredible work that you are doing here in Ireland, not only as part of it being the German EU presidency, but also promoting greater Irish-German links as part of our shared European future. Thank you, Deike, for that. And a big thanks as well to our partners in bringing today's event, to Matthias and the Konrad-Adenauer-Stiftung, and welcome to Katie, setting up in the Ireland office. We can't introduce people because we're in the virtual world, but I know over 300 of you are following us online, so fantastic to see that. And if I could thank as well my own team in European Movement Ireland, a bit like today's event with geographical connections. We have this event running from Cork, Wicklow, Dublin, Clare, and Galway, and so delighted and very appreciative. Excuse me. Of all the hard work that the European Movement Ireland team are doing. We have a huge range of events coming down the track. We'd encourage you to follow us online if you don't already. And in the meantime, wishing you and yours a very good rest of week. We all are going to be keeping our fingers crossed for the coming weeks, as the Minister and the Ambassador outlined. And please do keep safe and well. Slán go fóill. Thank you very much.